So with the quotient rule, so I'm going to highlight, you have one function on the top, highlight that one in yellow, and one function on the bottom. And what happens is you keep the bottom one the same, and then times it by the derivative of the top one. Then you subtract and keep the top one the same, and times it by the derivative of the one on the bottom. And finally, you divide it by the bottom one squared. In Leibniz notation, same kind of thing. If our top one is just u and our bottom one just v, keep the bottom one the same, times by the derivative of the other one. Subtract, keep the other one the same, times by the derivative of the bottom one. And finally, the bottom one squared. Okay? Now, this one, the order matters. Whereas with the product rule before, you know, if you remembered the product rule, okay, and there's sort of two ways to go about remembering these. One is to always remember the bottom one or the second one. This is what I did in university for my memorization. I remembered the bottom one or the second one. If you always start with that one first, staying the same, this would be correct. And then when you have dividing, if you always remember, start with the second one. That's one way that you could use to memorize it. Someone else said they just memorized the second one because the order of the first one doesn't matter. Just keep on the same derivative of the other one, then add whichever one you haven't done times the derivative of the first. Really doesn't matter the order. You're going to get it right either way. Then just really focusing on, you have to start with whatever on the bottom first, keeping that the same. So those are just some things to help you memorize these. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do the derivative, and this one does say simplify your final answer. If it doesn't say that, you could just use the formula and write out your answer in its expanded form and you would be fine. But this one does say simplify as much as possible. So we'll look at what happens with that. So we're going to keep the bottom one and then multiply by the derivative of the top one, minus, keep the top one, and multiply by the derivative of the bottom one, all over the bottom one squared. So for most times, this would be fine. This is what you would have as a final answer. Now, in cases where they ask you to simplify it, what they're looking for you to do is have everything as factored as you could. If there's something in common, you'll factor it out. If you have to expand, you may need to expand a few things. But first of all, the first thing we're going to look at in the top part of this fraction, is there anything in these two terms in common? Is there something that I could factor out? Can you see that both of them have a 3x squared? So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to factor out that 3x squared. Well, what would I be left with? I'd be left with a 3x minus 7 from the first term. And in the second term, I'd be left with just an x. That would all be over 3x minus 7 squared. And since 3x minus 7 squared on the bottom is really 3x minus 7 times 3x minus 7, already factored, we would leave that. We wouldn't expand that out. What we want to do for simplifying is see if there's something that would cancel out. And the way you'd find out if there's things that would simplify and cancel out is by factoring them. So I still have the 3x squared. Inside the brackets there, I have some like terms. And by multiplying out, I notice that there is nothing that cancels out. Sometimes there might be something that when you simplify it, you could actually cancel out. In this case, there's not. Now in your textbook, when you do questions, and I'll give you some time for homework at the end, okay? You're going to do the derivative first and get an answer. Then what I want you to do is to check the answer in the back of the book and see what form that they have the answer in, and then it's your job to see if you have the algebraic skills to manipulate what you came up with to come up with how they have their final answer. Okay, so you want to see if you can use those algebraic skills. So if this is what you got at first, but you look in the back of the book and this is the answer that's given, can you do your algebraic skills to do that? And generally, the factored form is the way that it would be written.